Fertile agricultural region stretching 500 miles through the center of California. In the early 1960s, migrant farm workers who picked crops in these rich fields knew only misery and poverty.
Mr. Pena, how much do you earn a year?
Oh, well, about $2,500 a year. You know.
How much education have you had?
None.
Never been to school?
Well, yeah, a few years and so.
Can you read?
Not too good.
How much have you been getting for a day's work?
Only $2.
$2 a day?
Yes.
You have a little boy. Would you like him to be a farm worker?
No, sir. I've been working all my life in fields, and I don't think it'd be the best place for him. I'd like for him to get a good education.
Farm workers, unfortunately, were considered just another item.
Just like all my brothers and sisters, and just like most of the people in the community, we all grew up in the fields. The only way that we could really put some roots down and to get an education was to have like a home base, because that was one of the things that we saw, that with the migrant families in particular, that they were pulled out of school all the time and they just really didn't have a chance to get much of an education.
Economic rights are the essence of human rights. First of all, every study shows you that without economic rights, you don't have educational rights.
When you are in a rural area, you're very vulnerable, especially if you are living from hand to mouth. There is very little integration of other ideas that's taking place when you're constantly moving. You never form a sense of place. You're constantly worrying if you're going to have enough money to pay for the gas, or you're going to have enough money to buy the food. It's a tremendous feeling of isolation, fear, where a rancher can do almost anything that they want with you.
Past efforts to sustain a union among farm workers in California had failed.
The NFWA called a strike meeting to see whether they would officially join the strike. And it was on September 16th, which, as you know, is Mexican Independence Day. And for any good Mexican, you know, September 16th, I mean, we're all feeling full of revolutionary fervor and patriotism, and people started talking about how unfair what the growers were doing and why we needed to fight back. And then a guy gets up and starts talking. I said, oh, that must be César. And he was tall with a mustache, very distinguished looking. I was very impressed. And then he says, now I want to introduce you to César Chávez. And so then César gets up, and he's this little guy, you know, he's very soft-spoken. That's César? You know, I just wasn't very impressed, but the more he talked, the more I thought that not only could we fight, but we could win.
We'll never stop. Our job will not be done until every farm worker is organized.
That was fertile ground. I mean, we were angry. Many of us were afraid. Many of us didn't know what to do. But we were just waiting. We were somebody just waiting for somebody to throw a match. And that's what César did.
El día 8 de septiembre de los campos de Deleno salieron los filipinos. Y después de 2 semanas para unirse a la batalla.
The National Farm Workers Association voted to join the strike. With only $87 in its treasury, union leaders prayed that the work stoppage would be brief. The strike needed a strong, unified stand against growers who had power and money on their side.
Read it and sign it. Les corté un papel para cada uno.
3 weeks after the walkouts, close to 3,000 farm workers were on strike, affecting dozens of farms in the southern San Joaquin Valley.
We're fighting for recognition, which is the real guts of it. It doesn't matter now how much money they're offered. They wouldn't go back because what they want is a union before they go back.
He was a national civil rights leader. And he was talking about the same things as Martin Luther King, nonviolence. He was talking about human rights that went beyond just the economic aspect that unions operate. Getting more wages, better labor conditions. How about the children? How about the racism in the school? You see, how about the local cops? And these are the things that the farm workers were about.
Que el amor debe ser vivido en las acciones de los hombres.
Responding to the boycott, the Senate Migratory Subcommittee opened hearings to investigate the plight of farm workers. Senator Robert Kennedy interrogated the local sheriff, trying to understand why striking workers were being arrested.
If I have reason to believe that there's going to be a riot started and somebody tells me that there's going to be trouble if you don't stop them, then it's my duty to stop them.
Well, then you go out and arrest them?
Well, absolutely.
And charge them?
Charge them.
What do you charge them with?
Violating unlawful assemblage.
Who told you that they're going to riot?
The men right out in the field that they were talking to said, if you don't get them out of here, we're going to cut their hearts out. So rather than let them get cut, you remove the cause.
This is the most interesting concept, I think. The fact that somebody makes a report about somebody's going to get out of order, perhaps violate the law, and you go in and arrest them. They haven't done anything wrong. How can you go arrest somebody if they haven't violated the law?
They're ready to violate the law. In other words...
Could I suggest from the luncheon period of time that the sheriff and the district attorney read the Constitution of the United States?
Two significant things came out of those hearings. One was just the fact that Bobby Kennedy came to Delano. And he got to meet César, he got to meet the other leaders of the National Farm Workers Association. And secondly, the hearings just gave visibility to the Delano strike. I mean, it did the opposite of what the growers wanted. The growers wanted invisibility and localization and, crush it locally. That's the strategy. For the strikers, the more statewide and national publicity, the better.
On July 29, 1970, the growers and farm workers met to sign the contracts at the Union Hall in Delano, almost 5 years after the strike had begun.
It was a happy day and a great victory for the farm workers.
We had been working so hard for so long for this that it was hard to believe that we'd won.
It never, ever, ever, ever crossed my mind that it couldn't happen. Not once. I always knew that we would be able to do it. And I think César felt the same way.
26 Delano growers signed contracts guaranteeing farm workers $1.80 per hour plus 20 cents a box, a hiring hall, seniority, and strict pesticide controls.
The boycott, the strike has been a costly thing not only to us but also to the employers. But I think that because, even though however unfortunate the experience might have been and the struggle on both sides, that because of that experience we have created the foundation to what I think is going to be a very good working relationship with the grower community in Delano.
10,000 miles begins with a single step. You've taken that single step. I wish you luck on the balance of the trip, and I hope that with this foundation, you can move on to greater things and will prosper, and so will you.